Hello there, and welcome to the Time Machine with Trish and Mike. I'm Mike.
And I'm Trish.
And we're glad you survived April Fool's Day and are with us once again. Hello, Trish.
Hello, Mike.
How are you?
I am doing well. How was your Easter?
It was good. I got candy, so,
Always a good time.
I always like the candy holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Like Valentine's Day, Easter, Halloween, Christmas.
See, I think I like Easter more than even Valentine's because you can get the special like eggies or the cream eggs.
That's true. The only real special candy at Valentine's is like the conversation hearts.
Yeah. Are those? Yeah, I think you can get those year round, can't you? In like Bulk Barn.
I don't know what Bulk Barn is, but is that a Canadian thing?
It must be a Canadian thing. I just assumed maybe it was a international, just a,
I mean, we have bulk stores here, but I'd never heard of Bulk Barn. We have Boot Barn.
Oh, I've never heard of Boot Barn. Is that a shoe store?
Yeah, it's like a Western store. So you can get cowboy boots, hats, cowboy shirts, that sort of thing.
Interesting. So you definitely do not want to be picking up, boots at a candy store or candy at a boot store.
No, but I've been to a chocolate factory that made they didn't make boots, but they made like a chocolate high heel. Like how you get chocolate in creative different shapes and designs.
I've gotten my dad like a chocolate beer bottle before.
Yeah, same kind of idea. Mm-hmm.
Not that he's like a big chocolate fan, but I thought it was funny.
Who doesn't like chocolate? I mean, I get that people aren't maybe a big fan of chocolate, but it's like, it's candy. Eat it. Enjoy it.
Well, I know I had two happy little bunnies here for their Easter. And, I have to get the mommy tax. So I get my share of the Easter bunnies bringings. And
I'm sure your bunnies are now hopping all around because they're full of all that candy.
Yeah. Time. It's like, go back to school.
Yeah, right. But yeah, good. Well, glad you had a good Easter, and
glad you did too.
Sure, the dentists around the world will be happy.
That is very true.
Because all the kids are going to get cavities, but I guess Halloween's probably the real. That's the biggest.
It's gotta be.
That's the biggest candy holiday, I think, right?
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, I know I'm not sure how it is in the United States, but like it's diminished here a bit. And I mean, COVID, obviously.
Well, yeah.
But even before COVID, it was starting to like, yeah.
Yeah.
And mostly it's the chewy stuff, right? If it's just chocolate, it dissolves pretty quick. It's the sticky candy that stays on your teeth. That's the troublemaker.
Yeah, unless you go brush or whatever.
Right away.
Oh, yeah, I'm brushing, Mom. Okay. No, you're not.
Yeah. No, you're not. Open up that mouth.
Kids.
Can't trust them.
Yeah, and you can't trust them to turn the light off when they leave the room either.
No. So many times I've had to go back. And I've turned into my father where, also if they leave the door open, it's like, we're not heating the outside. But speaking of lights, that brings us to our first story, which is actually, when we're talking about trust, this one's a little untrustworthy in terms of it being a bit of a mystery. So April 15th, 1948, there is a recording of a flash of light on the crater Plato on the moon. Now, when I was first researching this, I thought, it's just an isolated incident because it clearly came up in the timeline. But for centuries, people have noticed odd flashes and other inexplainable lights on the surface of the moon. So there's possible explanations can range from, they believe that it's meteors going past the moon and, just causing light to reflect.
Reflections, yeah. Okay.
That there's moonquakes to UFOs, but all of these theories have yet to be proven. So there's actually a new telescope in Spain that is being set up to try and collect some data and answer this mystery. It actually has a specific name. It's called lunar transient phenomenon and can relate to flashes of light on the moon that are either fleeting or longer lasting. Or they've also, astronauts and scientists have noticed that different parts of the moon can actually darken. Like the light can randomly change and the surface of the moon looks darker.
Okay, so we've got these lights coming from the moon
Mm-hmm.
on a object to which we know of there being no power source.
Right.
I mean,
the only light we've seen from the moon is reflected from our sun.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, this was in the 40s. We put guys on the moon in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Did they find a switch to flip on and off or something? I mean,
they did not, but
couldn't they have figured it out?
They did not, but they did notice that there was this darkening of the moon, and they couldn't really figure it out. So Apollo astronauts, including Apollo 11's Michael Collins, reported seeing these unusual bright areas. So it's like sections of the moon would get illuminated or darkened, depending on where they were. So he's quoted as saying, "There is an area that is considerably more illuminated than the surrounding area. It just seems to have a slight amount of fluorescence to it. A crater can be seen, and the area around the crater is quite bright." So it seems to be centered on various craters of the moon.
Okay, so that tells me that this is got to do with reflecting light, shadows, the contrast. I mean, I don't think, well, maybe the aliens went there before Apollo 11 did, and they sprinkled some like sequins on the moon or something to make them sparkle and glisten. But
well, and the powder of the moon itself is very luminescent, right?
Right, and it's very fine too. So I'm thinking this. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. Let NASA give me like the $400 million you're going to spend on the study. I'll happily spend it for you, and tell you that this is just reflective. I mean,
but you wonder how it's reflecting.
It's just about angles.
But I guess the moon is rotating and orbiting around the Earth, so there is movement, but it should be consistent. There's no wind on the moon. There's no atmosphere, so it's not like the dust is being kicked up. So I guess that's why they think maybe an asteroid is hitting the moon and there's dust, but then you would see the asteroid. So I don't know.
Unless the asteroid's hitting the backside of the moon that you can't see, but I can't imagine that would shake the moon enough to jiggle the dust around. But gravity is lighter on the moon, so is it plausible that as the moon is rotating, that because of the lighter gravity, there's a little bit of a bounce
movement?
Yeah.
I think that you should definitely send your theory to this Spanish space organization that is investigating it.
And they can send me the check.
Yeah. I mean, it's being led by a gentleman named Heiken Kyle, who's a professor of space technology at Julius Maximilians Universität in Wurzburg, Germany.
He got a Twitter? I'm going to tweet him.
Maybe. Be like, hey, I got a theory.
I'm going to slide into his DMs.
So I know they were saying they were hoping to get some results by 2020, but as of my research, they have not yet concluded any.
Because they didn't contact me.
Yeah.
I figured this out.
They got to listen to our show, and we got it.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably an alien out there, 16 parsecs past Pluto that's listening to our show. I mean, we can't get somebody in Germany to listen to it?
You think that they would come up with a better joke? Maybe it's April Fool's, a late one, than just like, let's freak the humans out by randomly having random illuminations coming from the moon's surface.
Let's do it. Next time we go up there, because that's going to happen here in the next.
It's going to happen soon.
Yeah. So just like somebody go put a disco ball up there.
Yeah, why not?
Go find the flag that Neil Armstrong planted on the moon and go slap a disco ball sitting on top of it, and there you go.
Problem solved.
Yeah. There you go.
Now we'll know it's a party.
Speaking of parties, it was a party in Houston on April 9th, 1965, when the Houston Astrodome opened.
I see what you did there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. A crowd of 47,879 fans packed into the brand new Astrodome for a preseason baseball game where the hometown Houston Astros beat the New York Yankees 2-1. Now,
Only 2-1.
Yeah.
Huh.
So obviously it was a pitcher's duel to get
Yeah.
a low scoring game like that. The Astrodome was the world's first multi-purpose domed sports stadium.
Say that like 5 times fast.
The Astrodome was the world's first multi-purpose dome sports stadium. The Astrodome was the world's first multi-purpose dome sports stadium. The Astrodome was the world's first multi-purpose dome sports stadium. The Astrodome was the world's first multi-purpose dome stadium. The Astrodome was the world's first multi-purpose dome stadium. I did it.
You did it
Almost.
without even floundering. It's funny though, after you say certain words over and over again, they start to just make like nonsense. You're like, I know you're saying words that make sense, but now it's just like blah,
it's
blah, blah.
just gibber, right? And anybody still listening to the show at this point is thinking that the file is corrupted and is just on repeat.
You're just skipping.
Yes, which we'll get to corrupted files later in our future story. But
that is true.
Back to the Astrodome. So construction began in 1962, and obviously it opened in 1965, and was home to the Houston Oilers, the NFL team that they had from 1968 until 1996, when they left town and moved to Nashville to become the Tennessee Titans.
Oh.
In part because the stadium was, needed to be replaced, which we'll get to. And the Houston Astros from its opening in 1965 until 1999, when they would move to a new ballpark that was at one point originally known as Enron Field, but as we all know, that didn't last. And of course, then they sold the sponsorship to Minute Maid and became Minute Maid Park. Minute Maid is like a juice company.
Right.
Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah. Minute Maid, and then it's funny to have it in French, right? Everything's translated.
Muddy. Is that right? So they
Actually,
close?
Oh no, I'm thinking Deli Sink. That's funny. Never mind.
Deli
Five Alive.
Sink?
Five Alive. Deli Sink.
Five Alive?
You guys not have Five Alive?
What's Five Alive?
It's like a juice.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
No,
But
like an energy drink, or is it like a natural?
No, like an orange juice. It's like five juices, citrus juices blended together.
We have V8. Do you have those?
Yeah, we have V8.
Okay.
I used to have V8 in my lunch. Well, between V8 and like the little tomato juice cans, because my dad really liked tomato juice, and then I would steal them from his lunch and take them in my lunch.
I like tomato soup. I know it's not the
tomato
same
juice
thing.
though.
No,
it's good. The only thing I don't like is clamato juice. No.
No, I'm good. I like tomato soup, but anyway.
Yeah, I digress.
Yes.
We went off on a weird tangent there. Talking about Minute Maid to Five Alive. Okay.
You could follow the logic. I can see how we got there. How we get back, I don't know. So we're just going to do it.
We're just going to blame the sugar on Easter. Okay.
I mentioned V8. 8, the number 8. The Astrodome was called the 8th wonder of the world.
Ooh. Nice bringing us back around. Expertly done.
Yes, thank you. So it was really totally different at the time because, nowadays it's fairly common to have domed baseball stadiums, football stadiums. At the time, it was not. So it was kind of groundbreaking. One of the things that they did was they had installed natural grass. They had like the special kind of grass, and the roof panels were clear, and so light was supposed to come, and it was supposed to have a natural grass, and everything was going to
like a natural environment. You'd feel like you were outside when you were inside.
Exactly. Other than having the dome. Well, that didn't quite work out. The grass died.
Oh, really? Like even the light coming in through the glass didn't work?
Well, the light coming in the glass also caused a problem for the outfielders because they couldn't find the fly balls when they were hit up because the way the light was coming through.
Oh.
So
That wouldn't
yeah,
work.
that was the
So it's like
problem.
blinding them as they're
Yeah, they
trying
couldn't
to find these
track
fly
the ball.
balls.
And,
Oh
yeah.
man.
So
So mistakes were made and redesigns happened, I'm assuming.
they became the first sports venue to install artificial turf, which became known as
AstroTurf.
AstroTurf.
Oh, it makes so much sense.
So, as we mentioned, over time, the stadium started to get older and
Mm.
was in need of being replaced. And the Houston Oilers moved to Tennessee. They were the Tennessee Oilers for a couple of seasons, and they became what they are now known as the Tennessee Titans. And this prompted the city of Houston to say, okay, we need to build the Houston Astros a new stadium before they leave town.
I always got to keep these sports teams happy.
Well, you
I
do.
mean, when you
And
think about all the money they bring into a city,
they
holy,
do. And, you're looking at something 30 years
yeah.
old. And especially if you look at something from the 60s to the 90s, there's a lot of change in
Oh,
design
technology.
and
Yeah.
technology and
Mhm.
everything. And at its time, this place was, quite a
Well, quite a
spectacle.
feat. Yeah.
So eventually, Houston did wind up building a new football stadium because in 2002, the Houston Texans football team began playing. So they did
Yeah.
eventually get a football team. This kind of goes back a little bit to we talked about a couple weeks ago about the Baltimore Colts going to Indianapolis.
Hmm.
The NFL realized, hey, we really need a team in Baltimore, so they took the Cleveland Browns and sent them to Baltimore. Then, oh wait, Cleveland, you need a team again. Here you go. You can have a new team. Wait, Houston went to Tennessee. Okay, well, Houston, you can have a new team.
And you get a team and you get a team. Oprah's just throwing them out there.
And a few years ago, we had the Chargers come up from San Diego to LA, and we had the Rams go from St. Louis back to LA.
Oh, goodness.
So teams just move around all over the place before they eventually return or get replacements. Anyway, AstroTurf was not the only other new development of the stadium. The scoreboard, which was eventually known as Astrolight, became
Oh.
the first animated scoreboard.
Oh, interesting.
So, like at
Like
the
where you could have
time,
video on it?
it didn't really have video, but you could like program light sequences.
Okay.
So, like for example, you could have instead of just having the score up here, the score could go away and you could flash up home run or
Oh, okay. I
something.
get it. I get it.
You know.
Nice.
Mhm. In 2005, the Astrodome was used as shelter for evacuees after Hurricane Katrina.
That
People
would make
lived in the
sense.
Astrodome for months.
Oh, can you imagine? That would just be bizarre.
It would be, but at least
But
it
you'd be
was
really thankful that you had this building that was
had
able to house so
something.
many people. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it possible to have a rainout in a domed stadium?
You mean I would like to say no, but I have a feeling you're going to tell me that there's some weird loophole, like a flood.
June 15th, 1976, this game became known as the rainout. The Astros were scheduled to play the Pittsburgh Pirates when massive flooding occurred in the Houston area and prevented pretty much anybody from getting to the stadium. The teams were already there, but it was just impassable. The roads were impassable, so you couldn't go to the game. There were like a handful of fans in the building, so they waited and they wound up calling off the game that day due to
Oh,
rain.
they
And
didn't just go ahead with it because the teams were already there.
yeah, this is what I couldn't figure out why they
That's
didn't.
so
It's like
weird.
if the teams are there, I
Just
mean, just,
play.
just play the game. I mean, there
Yeah.
wasn't, to my knowledge, at least anything that affected the stadium that would have hindered them from playing.
Right. And
But
it was televised, I'm assuming.
I would guess locally. I mean, we're talking the mid
Oh.
70s, so I don't
Oh,
know
maybe.
every game necessarily was on TV
Right.
back then. Not
But
everybody had a
still, I
TBS
mean,
to broadcast the games like
well,
we
and the
talked about.
point though is to get into the championships, right? So like you want to play to just further your season.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
one game. They wound up making the game up later in the season. So
Okay.
the
Huh.
building still stands, although
Oh,
they do not regularly have events in it anymore.
so
They
it's just a giant empty domed stadium.
basically, yes, there have been numerous plans over the last decade or so on things to do with the building. They want to turn it into an indoor park. They want to turn it into some sort of an event center, but
Seems like
nothing.
wasted prime real estate.
It is because it's literally right next door to NRG Stadium, which is the new stadium that they built in Houston.
Mhm.
There was at one point a plan when Houston was pitching to host the 2012 Summer Olympics of
Oh, to use the building.
renovating it to become the main stadium to host the opening and closing ceremonies and track and field and that sort of thing. But Houston didn't wind up getting the 2012 games. Of course, we know those went to London.
Right. That's unfortunate.
That it is.
It's like what they could use it for is like a permanent circus, because those are normally mobile or whatever, but anything that can bring in a crowd is worthwhile.
Well, and that's one thing in Houston. They annually have the Houston Rodeo and Livestock Show. So it's like this big, like, I think it's like a 2.5 week festival that they have. They used to do it at the Astrodome, and they wound up moving it once the new stadium opened next door. That's where they have it annually. So they have like a rodeo event during the day, and there's all sorts of categories and competitions. And then after the rodeo is done, every night they wheel out this big stage in the middle of the arena, and they have concerts every night. They're draw a huge
So we have
crowd.
something similar in Calgary, the Calgary Stampede.
Calgary Stampede, yeah, exactly. Same basic idea. And so the last concert in the Houston Astrodome was at the 2002 Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, and where George Strait drew 68,266, setting the Astrodome attendance record.
Oh, see, I don't even know who George Strait is.
You don't know who George Strait is?
No. Should I know who he is?
He's a country singer. I mean, no, you have to. All my exes live in Texas. No.
No, not ringing a bell.
Ace in the Hole.
No.
No.
I'm not too sure. I'm not like a big country fan.
I mean, fair enough. I mean, I'm trying to, like, he's an example of somebody who, when we had our discussion several episodes back about biggest selling artists of all time, he's on that list. Right. Garth is number one. But, like, George is, I think he's somewhere in, like, the top 20 or so. Because he had such a long career. He put an album out every year that would always sell 1 to 2 million copies. So it's like over a 25, 30-year career, if you're selling 1 to 2 million copies, and granted, you have some that do 3, 4, 5 million along the way, but
now I feel like I should know this. It's like I feel like I should know someone who puts out an album and sells like 1 million of them a year over X amount of years.
He's the reason that Garth Brooks does country music.
Oh, is Garth Brooks influenced by him?
Big time.
Oh,
yeah.
I did not know.
It's one of Garth's biggest musical influences were George Strait, Billy Joel, and Kiss, and Queen.
So I knew Billy Joel. Oh, okay. That's so funny. Yeah. Well, anyway. I've learned something new, as have all of our listeners, unless they already knew. And then Trish is just the oddball out. But do you want to know what also stampedes, Mike?
They don't have this animal at the rodeo.
They do not have this animal at the rodeo. Nope.
At a circus, which is a controversial thing, and we won't even get into that. But tell us, what can stampede me?
Well, what can stampede you? April 13th, 1796, the first elephant arrives in the U.S. from India. So we have, I guess, I don't know, can one single elephant stampede? I don't know.
Well, I guess step on you.
They could step on you. The first elephant was brought to the United States, like I said, in 1796 aboard the America, which I thought was very ironic, which set sail from Calcutta for New York on December 3rd, 1795. Now, this is where history can get a little murky, because there is an elephant that is known by the name of Old Bet. The first reference of Old Bet starts in 1804 in Boston, as being part of a personally owned menagerie. But now we're not quite sure if this is the first elephant that is on record from 1796, or if Old Bet is an elephant that came on a different ship. But a lot of historians connect the two and say that they're the same animal. So I followed the little trail of information that led me along this interesting history of Old Bet.
You followed the hoof prints.
The hoof. Well, I guess they don't have hoofs. they have keratin, right? Same as our
Oh,
fingernails. So I
Yeah,
guess it's not
they're not the
hoofs.
hoofs. But in
I
case,
followed the
go ahead.
giant footprints.
There you go. And you
Yeah.
find the giant footprints a lot when you have a stampede, although it would get hard to figure out what elephant left what behind. A stampede is an uncontrolled, concerted running as an act of mass impulse among herd animals or a crowd of people in which the group collectively begins running, often in an attempt to escape a perceived threat.
Oh, so I guess one animal cannot stampede.
Considering as a crowd.
A crowd. Yeah.
Or among herd animals. So yes, I guess by definition, it would require more than
Multiple.
a singular elephant.
Just one elephant's just running, just jogging. Right. Well, in 1808, while residing in Somers, New York. Now here's a name. Hakulea Bailey purchased the menagerie elephant for $1,000, and this is where the name Old Bet comes into place because he named it this. So that's where they're not quite sure if it's the same elephant or slightly different elephant, but whatever. We're going to assume it's the same elephant because I'm assuming in the 1800s, seeing one elephant for the first time on U.S. soil would be quite unusual and memorable. Sadly, on July 24th, 1816, Old Bet was actually killed while on tour near Alfred, Maine, by a local farmer named Daniel Davies, who shot her, and he was later convicted of this crime. While many people believe that the farmer thought it was sinful for people to pay to see an animal, another suspected reason is that he was actually jealous of how much attention and money Mr. Bailey was receiving with his elephant. But it ends kind of happily. In 1821, the Scudder's American Museum in New York announced that they had bought the hide and bones of Old Bet and that they would mount the remains at the museum. The elephant was memorialized in 1825 with a statue and the Elephant Hotel in Somers, New York. And in 1922, the elephant John L. Sullivan, that's a very fancy, classy name for an elephant, walked 53 miles to lay a wreath for the memory of Old Bet at her memorial statue.
Now I'm curious how far elephants walk on a regular basis. 53 miles sounds like a lot.
That sounds like a long time for a poor elephant.
Yeah, traveling by car, that's going to take you an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Granted,
so that's like half a day? How fast can an elephant walk?
I don't know. Couldn't we put him on a train?
Average land speed of an elephant. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. But so, like you had mentioned, circuses, people, even back in the 1800s, not so pleased about animals being on display for money, but at least we're able to learn and grow and that it wasn't all in vain, that people are able to go to this museum and pay their respects.
Yeah, I got to be honest, when you were first talking about the museum buying the elephant, I was thinking that's going to be a big elephant. That's going to be a big animal to like taxidermy. Like,
yep.
How much stuffing do you have to put in an elephant?
It's like, and what kind of stuffing? Like, is it packing peanuts? That would be a little ironic.
Well, circus peanuts, I guess, but
very true.
Then you could probably attract ants, and that may not go well.
That would not go over well. No.
The museum's closed for Christmas, and you come back, and there's a herd of ants, just like
a herd of ants
wallowing away on the leg.
Oh,
not good.
I guess they're more like a colony of ants, aren't they?
Colony, yeah.
All these animal terms.
Okay.
Speaking of wild animals, as you hear mine running around in the background. And speaking of animals, it takes us to our next story, which is actually, it's not about animals, but about a person with an animal last name.
Technically, humans are animals.
Okay, you're right, but you know what I meant.
I know, but I'm just... The transition still works.
The transition still works. April 12th, 1980. Every Canadian is going to know this name, but Mr. Terry Fox begins his Marathon of Hope in Newfoundland. And his goal is going to be to run across Canada, a marathon a day, for cancer research. And he had an original goal of setting up, if every Canadian could donate $1, he wanted to raise $30 million. And now, I don't know, have you participated in a Terry Fox run?
Do you think that I run?
Well, okay,
I'm flattered that you think that.
I should preface this with a Terry Fox run is not really like a run.
If I'm running, you probably should start running because that means my life is in danger.
Oh, no.
Okay.
But a Terry Fox run is like a walk, or when in Canada anyway, growing up as little kids, you would just walk around your school. And you would raise money. Like some schools would be like, if you went around your school one lap, you donate $1.
Yeah, I've done things.
Right?
We've done things like that before. Like when I was in elementary school or something. You do laps and raise money for X
different
or
things,
whatever.
Right?
Yeah. That
like there's skip-a-thons and walk-a-thons and things like that. But the Terry Fox run is always held in the fall, in September, in honor of Terry Fox and his cancer research. So he is going to be born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, July 28th, 1958, and then move with his family to British Columbia, because most Canadians would never have known that he was born in Manitoba. We always think of him as being from British Columbia.
Not to cut you off, but it's
okay.
Whenever you say the city and the province, I always instinctively hear the country in my head.
Like that Canada's tacked on?
Right. So like... so-and-so was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Of course, you guys don't call it that. You just say, he was from Toronto, Ontario, or he's from Edmonton, Alberta, or he's from whatever. But in my head, there's always Canada, because that's how we often will hear it.
Think about geography?
That's just how we'll hear it announced here often, or referenced. So usually...
See, and we don't do that with our reference to your cities. Like, it's not like you do, Tampa Bay, Florida, USA. It's just Tampa Bay, Florida. You're like,
Which technically Tampa Bay, Florida does not actually exist. There's Tampa, Florida. You have St. Petersburg, Florida. And
where's Tampa Bay from?
Now, Tampa Bay does exist because that's the physical name of the bay that comes in from the Gulf.
Oh, okay.
But there's not a designated, quote, city
named Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay, right.
Oh, I learned something here. That's so funny. I always thought it was a city.
So when you say Tampa Bay, depending on what most people are going to refer to Tampa or the Tampa
area.
St. Pete area. So it's like you have the Tampa Bay Lightning hockey team. They play in downtown Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
The Tampa Bay Rays baseball team play in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Maybe it's because I do associate it with the sports teams.
Could be. Now, Green Bay, Wisconsin is an actual city.
Yes. Huh.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's interesting that you add Canada and we just don't as Canadians.
Yeah, because you don't have to, because you know it.
We just know it, I guess.
You just don't say, Omaha, Nebraska, U.S. But
that's true.
Because like with other foreign countries like London, England, you don't, that's the city and the country, because there's not a state. Now you can get into
that's true. We don't get into states or provinces, but I guess there's counties.
Right. And you can get into that with like Ireland. I hear people from, Bray County, Wicklow, Ireland or something, but then you have like Dublin, but I think Dublin can still be broken up. I'm not sure. So if you're listening in Ireland, don't
let us know.
Yeah. Don't I'll buy you a Guinness. Yeah. Just whatever. Anyway, Terry Fox.
Well, while living in BC, he's going to discover that he has a malignant tumor in his right leg, and the leg will be amputated about 6 inches above his knee, or 15 centimeters. And the night before his amputation, he reads about an amputee runner, and he dreams of running. He was very, very athletic in basketball and, running. And so he realizes that even though he's going to be an amputee, he might still be able to participate in the sports that he loves. So he begins training for his Marathon of Hope February 1979. And it's going to be that cross-Canada run. First time someone's ever tried to attempt it to raise research money and awareness. And during his training, he's going to run over 5,000 kilometers or 3,107 miles. And where we get to our date in history, of course, April 12th, 1980, is when he and his best friend are going to drive to Newfoundland. They have a van, and his best friend Daryl is going to drive the van behind him while he runs, collecting the money. And so he's going to dip his artificial leg into the Atlantic Ocean and begin his journey. And he's going to run the average of 42 kilometers a day, or 26 miles, through all of the provinces. But on September 1st, 1980, after 143 days, which is incredible when you think about it, running on one leg. I forget how many pairs of shoes he went through. And really, the tour did not start to see success until after he had made it into Ontario. So when he was in the Atlantic provinces, the Maritime provinces, people were just like, oh, they'd kind of heard about him on the news, but not really. And no one really was supporting it.
A West Coast guy.
He was a West Coast guy, and like it was brand new, and it was the first time, and no one was really paying attention to it. What's interesting is he ran through my hometown of Antigonish, Nova Scotia, and there is a steakhouse that's really famous in Antigonish called Mother's Web. And he and his friend are sitting, and at this point in time, they're not really getting along very well. And my parents and my brothers were actually sitting at the booth opposite.
Oh, wow.
And my mom said, like, yeah, you can kind of tell, like, they just weren't happy. And I'm like, I don't know who could be happy running 43 miles a day, like, you know, just eating whatever porridge in their car or whatever they were.
You get cranky after a while.
Yeah, you get cranky, and you're stuck in a van with like the same person. Not a great time. And my mom says she always regrets not taking my brothers over and like introducing, or at least saying like, hi, you know, big fan kind of deal. Because my mom had read it in the newspaper and really supported the idea.
It's one of those that could have gone, it could have really went two ways. They could have been grumpy and it wouldn't have been a good experience. Yeah. But at the same time, maybe it could have been one of those, man,
like
we're
uplifting.
We're making a difference out here. All right, kid. Yeah. All right.
She just didn't want to interrupt their dinners, so she felt kind of awkward.
Which I'm never a fan of. Like whenever you see a famous celebrity out, like if they're eating, I'm not going to bother them. If maybe you're in a waiting area, waiting for a table or something, maybe, or you know, just you see them in a store, but just 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna just leave the person alone.
No, it's like they're just living their life, doing their normal thing.
They're not being the famous person; they're being a human, and you know, I mean, if I can think of a reason to. like, oh, excuse me, hi, you know, can you move so I can get that thing off the shelf there? Oh, hey, you know, like that's like, cool enough for me. I don't have to be like, you know.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, she still says it's one of her regrets. She's like, you know, he's now an icon in Canadian history and memorialized on stamps and coins, but on that September 1st, which is why oftentimes that's when we had, like when I was little, September 1st or that first week of September of school is when we would have our Terry Fox run. 1980, after 143 days, 5,373 kilometers or 3,339 miles, he had to stop his Marathon of Hope outside of Thunder Bay, Ontario. His cancer had spread from his leg at the original source up into his lungs. And he had to return to British Columbia for treatment. And he was quoted as saying, like, I'm going to do my very best. I'll fight. I promise I won't give up. So he's going to go in for treatment. And on June 28th, 1981, after treatment with chemotherapy and different radiation, Terry Fox unfortunately dies at the Royal Columbian Hospital in New Westminster, British Columbia, 1 month short of his 23rd birthday. But his dream of raising that money, the $30 million, was actually hit before he passed away. So he saw that dream get realized. They ended up having like a major telethon and raise that money that he had hoped to see. Now over $800 million has been raised in his name, and over 60 countries participate annually in Terry Fox runs.
Awesome. And so it still
Yeah.
continues. His legacy lives on.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I know my school, we have one every year, and it's always good to remind the kids of, what you can accomplish, even if you are facing super great obstacles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Now, go ahead.
I just love the fact that he was able to see his dream. Like so many times people have a dream and then they end up passing away and they don't get to actually see it complete.
Right.
So I love the fact that he was able to see that before he passed.
Now, speaking of unique Canadian fundraisers and stuff, this leads me to the question, because I know it's coming up here soon. When is McHappy Day? Isn't that in May? I think.
Yeah, we have a McHappy Day. I will have to double check. Do you guys not get McHappy Day?
That was going to be my next question. I know what it is, but I will defer to my Canadian friend to explain what McHappy Day is, as she's efforting to find the
Google.
date for 2021's McHappy Day, which, if you're thinking, what is so happy about McHappy? Well, yes, that does mean we are talking about McDonald's. And let's be honest, I just want some fries right now because we're talking about McDonald's.
You just want fries. So McHappy Day is, do you guys have the Ronald McDonald houses for hospitals?
We do have Ronald McDonald houses. Yes.
Okay. So it's money raised. So it's from every Happy Meal and Big Mac, I believe. You get 25 cents is donated to the Ronald McDonald House.
From every Happy Meal and Big Mac sold on whatever that's specific. Because I think it's in May, right? Usually.
I'm trying to. It's saying May 6, 2021 here.
Okay, so then that's what the day is for this year, at least. I don't know if that's the normal day, but it is in May, I believe.
Yeah, it normally is around there.
So we don't have that here.
Really?
Mm-mm. They like on. I'll have to get one sometime to confirm this, but I know at least at one point it does literally say on the bottom of a Happy Meal box that like a penny from every Happy Meal sold goes to the Ronald McDonald House.
Yeah, it's like 10 cents or 25 cents. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But we like when it's McHappy Day, it's like, all right, kids, it's like bonus McDonald's day for our households because you just go and you do it, right?
Yeah, but we don't have like a dedicated day where X amount of whatever goes to that.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of interesting.
But you get a tiny, tiny percentage of every one.
Right. But is that true even in Canada as well? Maybe? I don't know. Next time you take the girls
I'll have to go double check.
Yeah, because next time you take the girls to McDonald's, look on the bottom of a Happy Meal box
and see what it is.
See if it says, yeah. I mean, take the food out first. You don't want the food to dump out and spill. So, and also for our American friends listening that don't know, the Canadian McDonald's logo has a maple leaf.
Oh, it has a maple leaf. Yeah.
On the M. Yeah.
That was something Nick came last year in February, right before COVID. So my boyfriend from Los Angeles, and that he was like, "Oh, you have a little maple leaf on your McDonald's arch," and I'm like, "What?" I didn't even like that. Wasn't even. And I'd been to the United States, and I just never noticed that we had a difference.
Yeah, I'd be curious. Now I'd be really curious, and there's. I guess maybe Toronto, Buffalo, or Vancouver, Seattle are really probably about the only two places you could plausibly do this. But I would be curious to have food from a Canadian McDonald's and an American one to see if they are.
I know the portion sizes are different.
Mm.
Yeah, like your sizes are, because it's a quarter pounder with cheese. Mm-hmm. In Canada, it is a quarter pound before you cook it. In America, it's a quarter pound after you cook it.
No, it's before.
Is it before?
Yeah,
okay, then ours is different? Something's flipped.
Pretty much any advertisement you see for food here, like in the fine print, something like that, is going to say net weight before cooking.
Oh, so then I wonder what it is, because I know your portion sizes are bigger.
Do you call them quarter pounders?
Yep, we have quarter pounders with cheese. Or like quarter pounders.
Right. But because you guys don't use pounds, you use kilograms. So
that's so funny.
So instead of like a quarter pounder, do you have like a half kilogram burger or whatever?
Nope. That's funny.
So we've Americanized your burger eating habits.
Yes, you have. That's like, and there's different things that we've been Americanized too, like analyze in, there was a word that we were looking up. And it's spelled with an S or a Z. Now I can't remember. It wasn't analyze, though. It'll bother me. But anyway, normally it would be spelled with an S, but because we are so Americanized, if you don't spell it with a Z, people think that you're spelling it wrong.
Gotcha.
And so we have to flip it.
Well, it's like how you were talking about Terry Fox running marathons. In America, we know it is 26.2 miles, but you guys use kilometers. So I'm guessing you guys measure marathons in kilometers?
I believe it's still measured in the miles, but we just convert it and have both numbers.
Because you had talked about feet. You guys use feet for height distances.
But I think that's just like an informal, because on our driver's license, it will say how many centimeters tall
you are. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And how many kilograms you weigh. But we all say, well, I'm 5'2". Like, I don't say I'm 163 centimeters or whatever it is.
Yeah. Or you'd be 62 inches or whatever.
Yeah.
Somebody asks me how tall I am. I say, well, it depends what gas station I'm walking in.
Oh, because of the signpost?
Because of the thing next to the door. Because if you don't line that thing up right, it's not going to give you the accurate height.
I'm going to check that out next time I'm in a gas station. Be like, I can get my dream of being like 5'5". Be like, look, proof.
Well, numbers are very important, and particularly when you get into coding and computer programming, and that takes us to
me.
That's your point.
With my COBOL. Yes. I will admit
COBOL, not COVID. COBOL.
Not COVID. Yeah. I will admit I did not know what COBOL was until researching this, but in 1959, a team of computer manufacturers, users, and university individuals led by one Miss Grace Hopper are going to meet and discuss the creation of a new programming language that's called COBOL, which stands for Common Business Orientated Language. So it is one form of computer language. It died out by the kind of 80s, so it's not really used anymore. Yeah. But what's really interesting is this Grace Hopper. She was phenomenally interesting. She's born December 9th, 1906 in New York, New York. She's going to die January 1st, 1992 in Arlington, Virginia. She was an American mathematician and rear admiral in the U.S. Navy, who was part of this pioneering of developing computer technology. She's going to help devise the UNIVAC-1, which is the first commercial electronic computer, and this Navy application for COBOL. So although COBOL was a business-oriented language, the Navy, I guess, needed to find ways of implementing it into their organization. So she was working with these other individuals to find a way to bring it together and utilize it for the U.S. military. So after graduating from Vassar in 1928, which I'm assuming is crazy for that time period as a woman, especially in science.
Oh, I'm sure.
She's going to go on to attend Yale University and get a PhD by 1934. She ends up teaching mathematics at Vassar before joining the Navy Reserve in 43. And she became a lieutenant and was assigned to the Bureau of Ordnance Computation Project at Harvard University, where she worked on the Mark I, which is going to be that first large-scale automatic calculator, which is the precursor to our modern-day computers. She's actually the first person to write a computer manual. There was no manuals before she devised it, I guess. She is also the reason why we talk about computer bugs. So a moth infiltrated the circuits of the Mark I, and she coined the term like, oh, there's a bug in the machine. So when next time you're like, there's bugs going on in my computer programming, it's all because of Grace Hopper.
And a literal bug.
A literal bug, right? I'm surprised those who chew it with bug and not like, I don't know, it's a moth, which I know is a bug, but
there's a moth in the computer.
It doesn't sound
bug just sounds like a good generic term. Because when most people say bugs, they probably think of cockroaches.
Yeah,
but they're cockroaches. They're not bugs. Like bugs, other than bunny, seems to be like a colloquial term for.
You don't say like there's insects, right, in the machine.
Right.
Yeah. So next time you think about it, that's her. She ends up retiring from the Navy with the rank of commander in 66, but she was actually recalled to active duty the following year to standardize the Navy's other computer languages that they start utilizing. She gets promoted to Commodore in 1983, and that rank was incorporated into Rear Admiral in 85. And at the age of 79, she's the oldest officer on active U.S. naval duty when she retires again in 1986. It's like, what an amazing life.
Yeah. That it is.
And I don't know anything about the ranks of your Navy. So I was like, I don't know. Rear Admiral, isn't that like the highest?
I'm going to apologize because we have a mutual friend, shout out to Russ, who
I know.
was in the
Don't
Navy.
hate me, Russ.
I don't know the ranking system as well as I should, but
Okay, because all of my information just comes from Star Trek, because I know it's ship adjacent when we talk about space travel, because they use all those Navy terms. So yeah, Russ, clarify.
Yes, and
Educate us.
I'll buy you a beer.
Well, we're gonna have to buy him a beer anyway.
It's true. Miss you, Russ. Speaking of buying beers, you know who could buy a lot of beer?
There are so many people who.
This is very true. Sean Fanning, who you're probably kind of thinking, but he did do some computer programming.
Uh-huh.
Because in 1999, he, as an 18-year-old freshman at Boston's Northeastern University, created Napster, which would go on to become the first major peer-to-peer networking system where you could trade back and forth.
I was trying to figure out, like, why is this name so familiar?
And he, of course, this is notable because on April 14th, 2000, Metallica, along with other record labels, wound up suing him because their point was you're illegally sharing copyrighted material that does not belong to you. And this is where as we get into copyright law and everything, this led to the debate of going back to, VHS tapes and recording things that were on TV. And yes, you're allowed to do that, and what you are allowed to do with versions,
right? Whether you're selling it
created.
again or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. Or personal use.
So the initial peer-to-peer aspect of it was shut down in 2001 after the company unsuccessfully appealed court orders that came about. So ultimately, he didn't win this lawsuit. Although the program lived on and, of course, went on to create numerous spin-offs subsequent to Napster. He was not involved in, but other
people took his idea.
Correct.
And his programming. Because I think you can gauge where you are in life depending on, like, did you use LimeWire? Did you use FrostWire?
Yeah, did you use iMesh? Did you use
iMesh.
Pirate Bay?
That's a new one for me. I didn't hear that one before.
If anybody's listening, I just know of these things and have not participated in these activities. What's interesting, though, is the company stayed around and he wound up investing in other companies, and as of 2019 he was worth $124 million.
Ooh, not too shabby.
So he did pretty well, and believe it or not, Napster still lives on to this day.
What, really? How? What do they do?
It is Napster was purchased by Rhapsody in December of 2011, and Napster now exists as a streaming service platform similar to Spotify.
What? That's so interesting. I had no idea.
You can, here's the thing, and I don't want to get into the ethics of Napster, of the original intent and what have you, but it did ultimately lead the way for all these streaming platforms, because the music business was impacted because you didn't have people buying albums, and that ultimately indirectly, I guess, led to iTunes being a thing.
Yep.
Which enabled people to buy individual songs. And then over time, as technology advanced and Netflix became a thing, people were like, hey, we can kind of do a thing for music.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting.
It's always funny. And you think of like Steve Jobs too, when he realized, okay, well, now we could store, instead of a CD of music, on the iPod mini and then the iPods, of course. Right?
Yeah,
like everyone's building on top of everyone as you get this idea. And now we have Spotify in our cell phones.
I mean, it's crazy to think that I hold a thing in my hand that even before Spotify, let's just talk about an iPod.
Mm-hmm.
I'm holding my iPhone, but let's say I'm talking about an iPod, which would have been, smaller even than this phone is, that could hold thousands of songs.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to hold CDs.
Like a thousand CDs in your hand versus your phone.
Right. Like, you have to have a big box to hold 1,000 CDs. Mm-hmm. And I can walk around with it in my pocket. And of course, now with streaming services, you can listen to millions of songs. And
yeah,
it's interesting.
We're living in crazy times. You wonder what's going to happen in the next, couple of decades.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of decades, but I can tell you what's going to happen here in about the next minute or two. We're going to play the closing theme song and wrap a bow. Wrap a bow? No, we're not going to wrap a bow. We're going to put a bow. Wrap up and put a bow on this episode. And if you didn't make it to the end of it, well, then I hope you got nothing but corrupted MP3 files.
All the bugs.
Napster. Yes, full of bugs. Mm-hmm.
But you did listen. Yes. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Because that's what happens with corrupted files. They get cut off and interrupted. But you made it to the end, so you get all the uncorrupted files you want, legally, of course.
Yes.
And we hope that you have a wonderful week. And Trish, do the thing.
As always, if you have any questions, concerns, queries, or freakouts, you can reach us on our Instagram page, The Time Machine with Trish and Mike, at our Gmail account, The Time Machine with Trish and Mike at gmail.com. YouTube, you Google Trish and Mike, or Time Machine with Trish and Mike, and you'll find us on YouTube. Please clip. Wow.
Clip.
The bugs are happening.
I can
subscribe.
Clip that out.
And that'll help us get verified and recognized.
And we'll catch you right here next time on The Time Machine.